This is KPPQ LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. My guest today is Carol Chapman, who is the coordinator of the READ, R-E-A-D, Adult Literacy Program for the Ventura County Library System. I asked Ms. Chapman here today to talk about adult non-readers and how they can receive tuition at the library. This information could actually change someone's life. You can learn how to read or learn how to read better for free with the California Library Literacy Program. We're so happy to have you here today, Carol.
Hi, thanks, Kathleen, and thank you for inviting me today. And hello to everybody out there in Radio Land.
Okay, well, we're anxious to hear and what you have to say here about the reading program. So, before we talk about the literacy program, let's surprise our listeners about your background and credentials. And then, how did you get into the teaching of reading?
Well, I did the teacher prep when I was in college, and I've been in education my entire career. I spent 20 years as an elementary school teacher, and then I was 10 years as a reading instructor at Ventura College. And while I was there, I also did the assessments for qualifying people for learning differences. And I got my master's degree in reading improvement with the reading specialist credential.
Oh, wow, quite a background there. So, why were you interested in reading?
Reading is so important. I mean, it seems like everything in life, from freedom, just the freedom to relax, the freedom to get all the information you need, and the ability to get the kind of job you probably want. It all hinges, so much of it hinges on reading.
Right.
And to me, it's a really patriotic thing too.
Can also be talking about democracy when we talk about teaching reading at the library. It seems like the ultimate in democracy, especially because it's a free program. So
Exactly. It's hard to have freedom if you can't read.
it sure is. You really, to live in our culture, you really, in Western civilization, you really do need reading. So
Right.
let's talk about what group is served by the California Library Literacy Program. How long has it been around and who funds it?
It started in 1984, and it's funded by the California State Library with funds that are mandated through the state budget. And the primary group that we serve is really broad. It's English speakers over the age of 19.
Oh, okay. Over the and these are adults over the age of 19, and they're also native-born American citizens. In contrast to, they're not English as a second language or ESL learners.
Right. However, we do also work with immigrants,
Uh-huh.
but only immigrants that are currently able to speak in English. They need to be able to talk comfortably with staff, to answer questions and discuss their goals, and do that without an English interpreter. Because what we really want is for them to be able to have an effective tutoring session with an English speaking tutor that will help them meet their goals.
Uh-huh. So you would kind of have to assess, informally whether they can speak well enough, to take be enrolled in the program.
Exactly. And that's
Uh-huh.
basically the qualifications that I gave you, is carrying on that conversation.
Right, right. So, Carol, it said that there's no free lunch, but this program is truly free. Could you tell us about the program and the easy steps to get started?
Okay, well, in the READ program, every student is assigned to his own private tutor, basically, and they work one-to-one.
Oh,
So it's very flexible, and The curriculum is based on that student's needs and that student's goals. And usually they meet an hour once or twice a week at the library. They've been meeting either on the phone or via Zoom or something like that on the online.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's good. So you also have site coordinators. How do these site coordinators fit into your program?
Well, all of our site coordinators are credentialed teachers, and each site has a coordinator that meets with every learner and does that conversation kind of interview with them to determine why they came. What is it they really want help with? What are they hoping that a tutor can help them to achieve? And does a quick assessment to make sure really where their reading is, what they can read. And they also interview the tutors and make the matches because they're looking for the best match
Oh, uh-huh.
for each learner, the one that will meet their goals. And then they're there to ask questions of and to monitor to make sure they're making progress and help them switch to different materials anytime they need to.
Oh, okay. So now people can go to get private tutoring, like at a commercial tutoring center. Now, how much does that cost? Do you have any idea?
Well, it really seems to vary. I would say if someone can find a private tutor for $15 an hour, they got really lucky. More likely, they're going to find people, again, lucky at $30, more likely 60 to $100 sometimes.
Oh my
One
gosh.
guy, we had one learner once that went to a commercial site and he was dyslexic, so he had a rather severe problem. But they told him it would cost $8,000
Oh
for
my
him to
gosh.
achieve his goal.
Was
Yeah,
he able to pay that much?
no, there's no way a person with a family, even though he had a decent job, he couldn't afford it. And they found us, and he managed to meet his goals. He's a good reader now.
Oh, okay. So you said that you assess the people and then assign them to a tutor for whatever they need. So they can get tutoring on other things that, rather than reading, for example, writing or filling out a form.
Right, exactly. In fact, common reasons people come to us is they can't read to fill out job applications, they can't write to know how to do resumes, they want to pass the GED, they need to be able to help a child with homework, or they need to be able to do math well enough to balance a checkbook and write checks. So, I mean, there's a whole range of things that people need, those kinds of basic reading, writing, spelling skills um, to feel accomplished in their lives.
Uh-huh. So would you like help someone pay a bill by credit card, for example, or hasn't that come up yet?
I'm not sure it's been come up yet, but yes, we would do what we could to teach them how to do it.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's great.
We don't pay their bills for them, but
Right.
we give them the skills and would actually sit and help them through it the first time. Probably we might need to do that.
Uh-huh. Okay, so I actually have a background in reading, among other teaching duties. So I know pretty much about the kind of embarrassment that adult non-readers have when it comes to their reading disability. And often they've learned to hide it and have cleverly developed many compensatory skills, sometimes even ploys to conceal their inability to read. Life is just very, very difficult when you can't read. These reading challenges hold people back from, as you said before, job advancement, their hopes and dreams, and their shame often prevents people from seeking help. Could you speak to this situation? How do you handle their embarrassment?
It's really sad and it happens all the time. We've had a woman that drove all the way from Santa Paula to the far end of Port Hueneme and somebody else that went from Agora Hills all the way to Camarillo just because they did not want take a chance anyone would see them. Everything we do is confidential, but it's still very hard for people. But our tutors and our site supervisors are really sensitive to that. They understand. We deal with it all the time. Everything we do is confidential. And they're so respected, actually. It takes such courage for someone who's been hiding this thing that they're ashamed of or embarrassed by, when they've been hiding it so actively since they were in first or second grade.
Uh-huh.
It's a habit, and it's very hard to get beyond that. I say usually it's when desperation intersects with courage that
Ah,
they get the courage to come in. There's some precipitating event, usually at home or at work, and our tutors and our site supervisors understand that, and they do their best to make everything comfortable and casual. And when you're in the library where other people are in that same situation, it just feels safer. And, we really respect them.
uh-huh.
Anybody that works up the courage to come in and say, I really need help.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
agree there, yes.
you automatically respect them, and you come to love them, and they feel the same.
Uh-huh. So that leads us right into, reading anxiety or learning anxiety. What part does that play into the attempts of poor readers to face their disability and get help? You mentioned precipitating events. What kinds of things might happen that could challenge somebody to come in?
Oh, all kinds of things. Um, Loss of a job, or you're afraid that your job is in danger. Someone's sick in the family, someone that needs your attention to read, for example, to read food labels for allergies. It's endless.
Oh,
The kinds of things that happen. It's like life happens to everybody.
right,
And
right.
when people have reading skills, they have an easier way to cope with those things. But usually it's either a work-related event or family. Okay, precipitating events can be anything from losing a job or wondering if your job's in danger, a family member getting sick and needing your care, or we've had someone that his wife could no longer pay the bills. So all of a sudden he needed to be able to write checks and read bills. Um, Children that need help with homework and the parents can't help with homework usually makes them want to improve that.
Uh-huh.
And usually it's a work-related or a family-related thing that's the last straw that they'll bring them in the door.
Right. So, is there an average sort of age range of reading that the learners enrolled in the literacy program have? I mean, yeah, in other words, is there a certain level most people achieve and then they can't, for whatever reasons, they were unable to go beyond that?
I would say we certainly get a lot of people that are almost either total non-readers or almost non-readers.
Oh,
But I would say the average person coming in, if they went to school in the United States, or if they learned ESL here, they probably can read somewhere in the upper elementary grades. So they know the basic sight words and they know simple words. The dividing line is when it comes to multiple syllable words. If
oh,
they don't know the phonics,
right.
they don't know how to divide those words and pronounce them.
And
So at that point,
would that be a word that isn't in their vocabulary?
if it's not in their vocabulary, but even if it is,
Uh-huh.
for example, we had one guy that he learned to read, and he had really good English language skills because he was born here. and he was able to read the Reader's Digest. By the time he left, he could read the Reader's Digest enough so that he understood things and he was comfortable. But when it came to take the driver's test,
Mm-hmm.
he failed. He took it because he thought he could pass it, but he, even though he knew what a pedestrian was, he couldn't read the word.
Ah, okay, we're going to have to leave it here for a minute. We need to do a station ID. This
Okay.
is KPPQ LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the women's room where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. My guest today is Carol Chapman, who is the coordinator of the READ Adult Literacy Program for the Ventura County Library System. Carol is here to tell you that you can learn how to read or learn how to read better for free with the California Library Literacy Program. And we're back, and we were talking about precipitating events that have people come in and some of the situations of people with low reading ability get themselves into. So I was just wondering, Carol, what is the percentage of poor readers in the general population? Do you have any kind of statistic on that?
And most people don't believe it. Statistically, research shows that in California, 1 out of every 4 English-speaking adults is reading below about the 4th or 5th grade level.
Wow, so that's really about 25% of the population. 1 out of every 4, that's very high.
And if you think about what that would look like in a football stadium, if every 4th person had to stand up, that would be a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
That
So
kind of gives you an idea.
it's much more common than we think. So let's clarify for our audience, just because you can't read doesn't mean that you're stupid, right? In fact, low level or non readers tend to be of average or above average intelligence. Um, Speak to that.
Exactly. And I think just if you only look at the fact that how well they hide it from us and fool us for years and years, it should give you an idea of how intelligent and clever they are. But in
Ex-
fact, companies like NASA, the rocket industry, actively recruits people that have dyslexia because they have such a unique uh, brain pattern and thought process, such high level skills that they're designed perfectly for that kind of work.
Ah, interesting.
A
Y-
lot of her tutors are just what I call just getting by. They know just enough to get by, and they're the ones that they they don't get caught,
Uh-huh.
but they're really intelligent. And people with dyslexia and other learning differences, brain differences, usually they excel in different fields like the arts and the sciences and business. They're great entrepreneurs because they're very broad-minded and kind of deep thinkers, high-level reasoning.
And all that work trying to hide the disability, I think I used to tell my students that it actually creates more paths in the brain, that it probably increases their intelligence, because they always have to be thinking about it.
Probably does.
Yeah, so to help our listeners understand people who have reading issues, let's just talk now generally and anonymously about a few of the types of people who come to the program, because our listeners very likely know someone who struggles with reading or writing issues. I know you told me this story of a gentleman who represents other people, who was a respected person, but was treated with disdain by his 4th grade son because of the way this dad read to the toddler in the family. What did his shame compel him to do?
He was really good at his work to the point where he had been offered several promotions but he never would accept them because he knew he couldn't pass the test. He knew he
Oh,
wouldn't be able to do the work
uh-huh.
afterwards. So he always just said, I love what I do. I'm fine. I just don't want to go up.
Right, right.
Um, but he definitely qualified and wanted to. And he's a perfect example of what the people that I say was just just enough to get by. He read
Uh-huh.
just enough to get by. And then one day you're talking about, he was reading to his toddler, and his older son was sitting there with him. And he realized that as he read, his son was getting so irritated. And he finally figured out it was that he was reading so slowly, and his son kept trying to get him to turn the page. And
Ah, he wanted to
that,
get, he was, son was probably reading with him and, was
exactly,
ahead of him. Yeah.
his son was ahead of him and wanted to move on.
Yeah. What a terrible
And
situation for him.
right. And but that was the example of the precipitating event. That man did not want to lose the respect of his son. He knew
Wow.
that that respect was so important that it gave him the courage to ask for help.
Wow. Well, let's,
And
oh, I'm
when
sorry.
when he did come to the library, we did find him the tutor that was able to help him. And he ended up not only getting his son's respect back, but also passing the tests he needed to pass at work and getting the promotion. And the last thing he told me a couple of years ago was that it also, now he could talk about books with his wife because they both read all the time.
Oh,
It was,
wow. That's
it was
really
just
cool. Now
amazing.
that is real success.
Yes.
So let's go on to the next person because we're running very rapidly here. Some of the stories about real people with reading handicaps are real tear jerkers. Just talk a little bit about the woman who was unable to read to her daughter. What compensation did she use because she couldn't read a bedtime story to her daughter?
Her friend told her how important it was to read bedtime stories. So she went out and got a video of Goodnight Moon, which is a
Ah,
very simple children's book. And every night they watched that, they got into bed and watched that video before she went to sleep. Well, the little girl did grow up and be a good reader and went to college. And then her mother decided, okay, it's my turn. And she came to the reading program, and the first book she wanted to learn to read was Goodnight Moon.
ah,
And when her daughter came home at Christmas, and I can never tell this story without crying. When
ah.
her daughter came home at Christmas, she tucked her into bed and read Goodnight Moon.
Oh, that
And they
is
both
so
cried.
cute. Yeah. This is representative of many learners who come in. The guy is the best mechanic in town, but he actually graduated from high school in spite of not being able to read. Now, is this something pretty common that kids actually graduate from high school?
It still happens, unfortunately. It's not as common as it was because of special ed and help like that, but it does still happen. And in this case, this gentleman was so nice and just so interesting because he had so many hobbies and interests. Um, and we taught him to read. He's the guy that I said read the Reader's Digest. When he left, he got to the point from non-reading to being able to read the Reader's Digest, and then we never saw him again for about 5 years.
Oh,
And then he came back and he needed help to pass the driving test because he couldn't read the words like pedestrian.
oh,
And then we didn't see him again for about, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And he came back and he was frantic at that point, just desperate to learn numbers. I need to know numbers. I need to know numbers. And it turns out he needed to be able to write checks and pay the bills because his wife could not do that anymore.
oh. Well, we're just about out of time, Carol. The time went so fast. But could you tell our listener how to get in touch with the reading program at the library.
Yes. The easiest thing is to ask for information at any Ventura County Library. Just ask the people there for help, or they can call our office, and that phone number is 805-677-7160. I'm going to repeat it. 805-677-7160. They can always also go to the library website.
And they could find a place to click there or get the phone number,
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Carol Chapman, for coming in to talk about the California Library Literacy Program, where you can learn how to read better for free and change your life. This is KPPQ LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. This is KPPQ LP Ventura, 104.1 FM. I'm Kathleen Good, host of In the Women's Room. In the Women's Room is a radio talk show focusing on women's issues, women's concerns, and women in the arts. In the Women's Room is where we appreciate and support each other. Kathleen Good here to talk about CAPS Radio KPPQ. If you thought radio is old tech, guess again. Radio is the leading reach platform. 93% of us listen. We like the local feel and personalities. KPPQ is commercial free, no tethers to corporate influence on our content. Our mission is to educate the public. 104.1 FM near the center of the dial, and CAPS Media is Ventura's Center for Information.